you're here to hear about AI, because the whole world is about AI. But we're going to talk about the not so nice side of AI and talk about what it is that you as developers can do to help. Right? So, as you've just heard, my name is Steve Poole. I work for this company called Sonatype. Anybody heard of us? Couple? Okay. We're the company, if you're a Java developer, we're the company that runs Maven Central. So Java developers here? Yeah? Okay. Python developers? Oh, cool. Excellent. And what else have we got? C#? .NET? Yeah, cool. Okay. So this talk is relevant to everybody. The only reason, I'm doing this because I'm really passionate about trying to help people, help developers learn about software security. And one of the best ways of doing that is to explain how bad things happen. Right? So we're going to go through the realities of cybercrime. We're going to look at what's happening, why, and then we'll go through AI and we'll look at what they can do and what they can't do. And then we'll end up with a section on what you as a developer can do, what you can take back to your companies, what you can start thinking about. So hopefully you get some practical thoughts out of this. So let's start with the bad thing. So when you think about cybercrime, if you think about it at all, you go, yeah, bad things happen. We've seen all the emails, we've seen the bits and pieces. We think about bad things happening, but maybe we haven't got it, maybe we haven't worked out the scale. You read stuff in the press and you go, okay, but what is it, how do you sum it up? How do you look at cybercrime from a world point of view? What numbers do we talk about? So I've been talking about cybercrime, trying these sorts of things, since about 2014, 2015. In 2016, which was a few years ago, something amazing happened. Not good amazing, but amazing happened. Up until that point, cybercrime was not a particularly big thing. Well, relatively thing. So in 2016, the amount of money being made by the bad guys suddenly became more than the amount of money made by the bad guys from drugs. So we've all seen the movies where, I don't know, there's always some movie about drugs. There's always loads going on. There might be funny ones like Ocean's 11 and things, or there might be real ones. You know the things where you see drugs being buried in the ground in containers, or the money being buried in containers, those sorts of things. So we all have an idea about physical drugs, right? That thing. And we all know how much effort is put in by the world to prevent it happening. And so with all that in place, the bad guys were still able to make $450 billion a year. Right? And it's hard to quantify, but one of the ways to quantify it is to look at what can you buy with it. So $450 billion buys you 50 of the largest US American aircraft carriers, fully loaded, right? So 50. There aren't 50, or there's roughly 50 aircraft carriers in the world, full stop. So in 2016, if you could get all the money that had been made by the bad guys into one bank account, you could go shopping and buy an enormous number of these things. I mean, it's ridiculous to think about this. It's hard to quantify and get your head around this. Now, when we talk about money being made, it's a mix of two things. It's a mix of real cash, so like ransomware and things like that, or just, I don't know, phishing and getting you to send them some money. And then there's the consequences of that. So if it's ransomware attack and you pay them, you give them some money that you may or may not be able to recover. And your systems may be down. So even if you do recover from a ransomware attack, your system may have been down for a week. And that costs. It costs your customers, your clients. So all this cost the impact to us comes back to us. So if you've got insurance and the company that's providing the insurance gets attacked, they have to pay for it. They have to figure it out. It costs them money. And where does that money come from? Well, they charge you. Your premiums go up. So $450 billion a year, as far as the world is concerned, is a pretty low number. But it all comes down to you, individuals. At the end of the day, companies and individuals end up paying for it. So that's how much, right? And you take $450 billion and divide it by the 8 billion human beings on the planet, and sounds too bad, right? But that was 2016, right? So want to guess, what do you think the number is now? What does 2013, 2014 look like? Do you think it's gone up 10 times? Double? Sorry? Trillions. You've seen my talk. So 2013, 2014, 6 trillion. 6 trillion. 620 aircraft carriers. If you bought 620 aircraft carriers, you get, thrown in, 85,000 jets. It's a ridiculous amount of money, right? And that's what it's costing. Suddenly, we've gone from being something that was in the scale of being manageable to being something that is now out of control, because it's been growing at about 57% per year, and there is no sign of it stopping. So if you think that's a big number, but you still can't figure out what does that really mean. Let me put this in context. Let's suppose we're looking at that as GDP. How much money does your country make per year? Right? So if that was GDP, cybercrime would be the third largest country in the world by GDP. Right? And the way things are going, unless this is managed, that will continue. And the expectations are that in a couple of years, it will exceed the United States. Can you imagine the scenario where the people making the most money in one go are the bad guys, right? Now, trillions of dollars are enormous amounts of money. GDP, big thing for all of us, right? Now, it's big, got to come from somewhere, right? And it ends up coming from us, right? Now, the interesting thing about all this is that why is it so fast? Why is it growing? And it's growing because it's easy. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the easy things, but you've got to understand that this is growing fast because it's easy. The drug trade, physical manifestation, you can manage it. There are police who can stop it. You can't stop cybercrime with a policeman, right? You have to catch these guys doing it. You need software solutions. It's a much bigger challenge, right? So they have all these wonderful weapons, these technologies, these tools. They get into your systems, fish you, all sorts of stuff, make $6 trillion. And that is bad enough, but it's even worse than that. Think about how easy it must be for these guys to make these ransomware attacks or things like that, because we have insecure systems. You only have to leave the door open a little bit and you can get hacked. So all those weapons are great, but they were used mostly to make money. And what else has changed over the years is a move from these things being about financial gain to be about financial gain and something else. Nation states around the world have always tried to use, ever since the internet began, they've always tried to find ways to hack each other. It's always been very low scale. But what is happening now, and it's been happening for years and this is growing, is the recognition that these tools can be used as weapons. And so now we're moving into cyber warfare. And the expectation sort of was that it would be a thing that was associated with real wars. And it certainly is. If you look at Ukraine and Russia and stuff like that, there's loads of cyber warfare activity going on. But that's one thing. What we've realized is that these attacks are being done by nation states against each other more and more as a matter of course. Because if I can use these systems, if I can use these tools that I've been using to compromise your systems, I can use them to get in and take control. And now I'm looking at attacking your system for long-term control, not for immediate money, but to get in there for this situation where at some point I go, I want to turn something off. So we're seeing more and more attacks on physical supply chains where the things that you use, right, so you imagine we're in this room. Don't imagine we are in this room. But look, it's software. Everywhere this is software, the lights are controlled by software, we have Wi-Fi, it's recording, cameras, phones, it's all software, right? So if somebody can get into the software, into that software supply chain, they can control things. And so the objective of this now, of these attacks, is to get into your systems and influence your economy, because they can do things to affect you. So, like make phones turn on without even touching it. How about traffic lights? Traffic lights suddenly stop working. Rail signals stop working. Shipments go to the wrong place because labels get switched. All sorts of small things happen, and especially like fake news. Fake news is a big, obvious thing that happens. But what you're seeing is more and more of these tiny, tiny attacks that influence your economy. Because if nation state against nation state can, they're going to go in there and try and compromise your system for the long term, but they can also use it now to influence your existing economy. Because why not? Because it's easy. So now what we see is this weird thing with nation states becoming more and more aware that this is a possibility, but also understanding that it can be used against them. Right? And we'll talk about that a bit later on. But that's where we are, right? We've got this situation where they are realizing that they want to get into your systems, not for immediate money gain, though that does take place, but they want to get into the systems for control purposes. And so suddenly everybody in this room is now a target, because it's a target not for the company and the money that your company makes, it's for who you know. Where are you? You're ahead of some infrastructure, you're a developer working on a key system. If that gets out, if you go onto Facebook and you go, hey, I've just got this great job and I do this, that can be discovered, and suddenly you're a target because of who you know and your connections, right? Because this is for long-term activity, so they're willing to go through and do that. And there are a couple of examples of that, right? So here's the reality now, and this is never going to change, that those sci-fi books that you may have read where you see corporate companies fighting each other in the internet, it's beginning to happen, right? So let's talk about you, right? Because you need to up your game, because you're not playing a good game. Who's connected to the Wi-Fi when it works? Everybody here connected to the kids' Wi-Fi? Anybody not connected to the Wi-Fi because it's not very good? You got 4G, you got connection to something else? Okay. Think about Wi-Fi. Think about your relationship with Wi-Fi. You make an assumption that SSS ID that you connect to is run by the people who are you think are providing. So you're in this conference and there's an SSS ID, list of them. Pick one, got a password, great. Passwords are in the back of this thing. So you make connections to Wi-Fi wherever you are without thinking about whether it's a real Wi-Fi provided by the people who you think, okay? Because, and I've done this, it doesn't take much to create a Wi-Fi hotspot with a white box or whatever electrical box stuck to the wall, easy. Little Raspberry Pi or some other sophisticated hardware plugged in. Did you know that with Wi-Fi, I can force you to connect to my gateway? Wi-Fi protocol is set up so I can encourage you, well, force you almost to connect. So you do not know who you're connecting to. So how many people here using Wi-Fi use a VPN. Okay, right. So for the rest of you, go get a VPN, right? Because it's one of the most safe ways that you can then use Wi-Fi. Then you can trust a little less, trust a little more. But this is really simple. There are a lot more sophisticated devices that you can connect. Okay, I can tell you a story about these devices and the Wi-Fi. And if we have time, I'll tell you the story because it's interesting seeing how this works. But you get the point, right? That you make, as people, human beings, we connect to these things because they're convenient and we just use them, right? And whereas that might have been okay once, it's certainly not okay now because they are all ways to compromise you, okay? And let me tell you the story anyway, because I think it will make more sense. So when I do these talks, one of the things I talk about are things like this. This is an Apple USB charger. Okay, you can obviously replace the thing with the power stuff. Anybody got one of these? Something similar? Yeah. Okay. Right. So you got one of these. I got loads of these. Okay. Okay. Has yours got a GSM chip in it? So this is what is this? This is a USB charger that plugs in the wall. There was a spate a few years ago of these fake versions of these floating around with basically a mobile phone chip in it. So you would plug this into the wall, plug your phone into it, and you're now powering a mobile phone that phones home, installs malware on your phone, whatever. Because do you know the difference between a data cable and a power cable and a USB one? Can you tell? No. From the outside? What, you can tell? Oh, yeah, so I know you know what the difference is, but if I gave you a physical cable, could you tell me the difference? No. Right, you've bought USB cables to, it comes with your phone. Mostly they're data cables. There's very few that are power cables. So that means this thing gets data connections to your phone. This thing gets it phones home. Right? This is not uncommon. Now, the likelihood of anybody in this room ever reaching one of these is low. But you think about what happens is they've now compromised. Maybe you've got one of these, you're at a conference, you're at a workplace, you plug it in, come back, nothing's happened. Well, maybe somebody switched it with one of these. And these physical attacks are happening as well. So people are coming in to compromise your systems using physical attacks. They're compromising you with physical attacks. Okay? And they do something else that's even scarier. There is this thing which is called physical choreography. And the objective is to make you as a human being sit somewhere, do something. So the classic, and you can go, you can see it's 2018, cameras in hotel rooms. Why cameras in hotel rooms? Well, apart from the voyeuristic stuff, from a cybercrime point of view, great way to see what's on your laptop. So what do? Well, I arrange the room so that the only place you can sit comfortably with your laptop is where I want you to be. That might be because that's where the power supply is, maybe where the desk is, right? Now, this is old school. This is from Cold War days. This is what, if you went to, you went to Moscow in the 60s, every hotel would have been like this. But it still happens, right? You have to be aware that these things can happen to you. And that depending on what your relationship is with your company, the data, you might be a target. Because it's not about money anymore. It's about who you know and whether they can get through to these things. Okay, so you can go read about all the horrible ways that they can influence you, and I encourage you to do so. But do it in the morning because it's not something to read about in the dark. Okay, so that's one set of ways of getting at you. Then there's this. Let's go fishing. I'm sure everybody's heard of the term phishing. Okay, right. So it's fun, isn't it? You get an email like this. These are all emails that were sent to me over the years. And, and you read the words and you go, what are they doing? You're just going to go, that's just silly. Just ignore it, okay? And then you get another one. This one I love because it's from the FBI apparently, and it says something about that almost held the fund to themselves for their selfish reason. And you read it and you go, yeah, okay, it's a silly one, right? Right. And then this is my all-time favorite, right, recent one, because I don't think that the car exists, and I like the expectation that I get a check for $500,000 and an Apple laptop, which I knew were expensive, but obviously not that much, okay? Right, so you get these and you laugh, okay, because they're funny, and you go, well, what are they doing, silly? Okay. How about something a bit more pertinent? So I used to work at IBM, and IBM have laptops, and laptops have a refresh process, as you know, I think. I get this email that says it's time for you to look for an upgrade, click here. And I read the email, and I'm almost convinced, because it's almost right. The people who did this understood how our laptop process worked and knew what words to say in the right way, and it almost got me. But I checked the email without linking it or anything. I looked at the email and I go, just not right. So it turns out it's a fish. But these people were targeting me. So the email was set up to convince me. Right? So you might get these. You might get these emails that are very terse, but set up to target you. Now, it might be, and this is something that happens regularly, is they look for your relationships. If you're on Facebook and you say, I really hate my boss, and that gets discovered, then what can happen is you can get things like this. If you're in the right place, the right time, and you're vulnerable, then you can get emails or texts or whatever from somebody you trust, or that you may not like, but you're frightened to go, well, that's wrong, but I don't like this person, but he's my boss and I'm frightened of him, so I will do what he does, okay? That happens more often than you'd realize. Right? And then there are ones that are very, very specifically crafted, and this is one where the attackers, this is a shipping label, but basically what happened was the attackers understood the shipping business inside out. Right? They obviously had people who worked there and knew how it worked. So they crafted an attack. They figured out who were the busiest people, and they targeted the busiest people. So the busiest people were too busy to put the thought process. They went, yeah, looks right, do it. And they got malware installed, okay? Right. These things are targeted more and more towards you because it becomes more personal, right? But think about this. Those phishing emails you got, which are the ones you laughed at, they weren't meant for you. They were looking for gullible, greedy people. So if you're a smart person and you go, that's phishing, they don't want you anyway. They don't want to have a conversation with you. They want to have a conversation with somebody who's not so smart and who's more gullible. Right? And that's what they'll do. And they'll mine your behavior. They'll look for information about you as much as they can and craft these things. Okay? Okay, so that's a lot of traditional stuff. Now let's add in AI, because this is the bit you've come for. Okay. Are you scared yet? All right. Nobody? Okay, you're not going to go home and change your behavior? Probably not. Okay. So the phishing emails continue, but the phishing emails become voice texts, voice messages, left in the voice of your boss. It doesn't take very long to get information about somebody's voice for an AI to mimic it. It is very, very simple. And I'll tell you that you'd need to listen to a lot of it to be able to realize it wasn't right. If you get small messages, you're going to be spot on. The more data they have, the easier it is to create it. Okay, and we will show you some examples. So it's really easy to do that. Right? You can go to the web. Let's see if this will work, because I've got this thing. Let's see if this works. Right. Can you turn up the audio? Hello? Can you turn up the audio?
Faster than ever to create new audio and video content. If you're a content creator, podcaster, video editor, or anyone else looking to elevate your projects with top-notch voiceovers, I highly recommend giving. Speechify has revolutionized my productivity with its custom.
Go on. Well, that was my voice, uploaded. I just followed some instructions on the web, and then it started speaking. It doesn't sound quite like me, but that's just on the web, right? That's just easy, okay? How about this one, right? Multi-person video. How many of you have been on a Zoom call with other people? How would you feel if those other people were fake? How would you know? What about multi-person video when you're coming into a conference with a bunch of other people who you didn't know, right? There's no way of telling, right? It turns out everybody he saw was fake, right? This is happening all the time, and it is accelerating because you're at a conference, a developer conference, and what do you see around? AI. So you think the bad guys aren't adopting this stuff? No, they're much faster than we are, right? This is happening, right? You've got to keep an eye out for it. And it's become really, really scary. Let's see if we can get this one to work. Okay. I can't remember if this is actually got. Come on. It's not, okay, right. We'll come on to the one. Okay, lip syncing. I'm really disappointed that hasn't come out. Okay, so lip syncing is exactly what you see. It is take an image and make the mouth move and sync up with the words. Easy. 2021, they could do that with basically static images. Getting movies to do it was much harder. Roll forward to today.
You guys, I think this is Tom Cruise.
You know, it's like a slap in the face. That's all I need.
Like this?
Everybody squints.
Yeah.
So,
That's
which of these is the real Tom Cruise? Well,
You guys, I think I see Tom Cruise.
yeah, well, none of these are Tom Cruise. There is a whole TikTok account to Tom Cruise deepfakes. But look at them, right? Look at this one, right? You saw that, right? These are state of the art. Well, actually, they're not state of the art, but they're almost state of the art. Now, imagine this happening in real time and somebody controlling it, right? I can show you so many examples of that. If these are videos created because they're videos created and uploaded, but you can see some interaction. There are ways of doing that, but also having this real time. You'd be you speaking to a microphone, your body position translated real time to these sorts of things, okay? So it's really scary now. Now, if I wanted to fake you, how much information do I need to be able to fake you, right? Well, I need a little bit of time, like 7 seconds of your voice. And now, I can't show you this one because I've got challenges with it. But you can go Google for this. This is recent, like this month. Go Google for Microsoft Mona Lisa, and you will find things like this. So Microsoft, just another tool. One image, because in this case it's Mona Lisa, one image animating into a 3D active video. And if you go watch it, you'll see, because it's actually famous actor, her voice, her movements, translated real, into this. Right. So one static image and some voice, and da-da. Yeah. So it's the Mona Lisa, so it's not real, but it could be anybody, and they've got loads of examples. And it doesn't even have to be a real person anymore. We can fake the faces. Okay. Scared yet? Because this is life, right? This is what's happening right now. And much as it's fun to say all these things, it is a God gift to the bad guys. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right, next one. Carry on. Come on. There we go. Right. So it is great fun, right? You can but it's so much that you can go on the web and just play with this stuff. It's easy. Right? Right? Absolutely easy to have fun with it. But as you know, it's also being used for absolutely evil purposes. Because it can be. The bad guys are doing it to make money, and then we have a bunch of the current generation who have access to the tools and going, well, I can do that tool because, kids. It's there, it's available, it is being used, and it is being abused. Okay? And it isn't going to stop. Right. So deepfake phishing grew by 3,000%. It is ridiculously easy to do this, and the scale of improvement. Let's see if this will work as well. Come on. Oh, no, it's not. No, it's not an embedded one. Okay. Well, this is not Morgan Freeman. This is from last year, by focusing on character generation and stuff like that. But this avatar doesn't look, you can tell it's not quite real, but that's easy to fix. It sounds like him, looks like him. You would not be able to tell from the voice that it's not him. Okay? Oh, right, let's move on. Okay. It's very, very easy to do these fakes. GPUs, you can get GPUs on the web, and you can get TPUs, which are the ones designed, the hardware designed to run Neural X. NVIDIA does them. Their business now is neural networks. Everybody who's got a computer with a desktop computer with GPU, play games, you've got capabilities there. You can buy these things. These are TPUs. These one's a little bit out of date. But that is a very powerful neural network processor that you can plug into your laptop and do really cool stuff with. Cool, really. Right. And there are more models than you can shake a stick at, as they say, for you to consume. You can go to huggingface.co, and every type of AI that you're interested in exists. Somebody has created one of these things and put it up there, and it's very easy to consume. And you'll learn that by other talks around here. It's very, very easy to use it. But you get the point that there is all this choice in the bad guys too. Now, the interesting thing is the AI models, which can be used in those bad ways to create deep fakes, those AI models also have other types of weaknesses. So if you train them badly, then bad things can happen because AI is a black box, right? So even if we ignore the cyber attackers trying to get into you through traditional mechanisms, you can let them in using AI because you don't really understand how it works. So this one recently, Air Canada created a chatbot, and the chatbot had a conversation with the customer, and the chatbot offered the customer a deal that the customer accepted, and then Air Canada went, no, you can't have that. They got taken to court, and they were told, your system provided the deal. It's not the customer's fault that you got it wrong, so you have to honor the deal, okay? So you're just embedding chat GPT or equivalent into your applications is not necessarily as safe as you may think, right? It might sell your company for you, right? And this one, this is great. This is just a hack. This guy goes to Amazon, the chat there, and rather than asking an Amazon question, it says, write reverse shell in Python. And it did, right? Because the thing to note with these AI models is that it may do what you want it to do, but that doesn't mean it can't do other things. So when you select an AI model from Hugging Face, you might have all sorts of ideas of what to do with it, but unless you know how it was trained, you have no idea what else it could do, because it's a black box. Right? Right. So this prompt injection thing is now being seen as a big problem because, well, for two reasons. One is because you just have bad things happen because people consuming AI models haven't thought about this. They're looking at all the positive sides and not thinking through the consequences. Right? So that's one. The other thing is these things can compromise your systems. So if you're a Java developer, right, you're not exposed to many of the challenges from a security point of view that the Python community might do, for instance. So for instance, you go to Hugging Face. I mean, this one I took the very first one I found, and it tells you how to use the model, but it tells you to install software. People don't realize that a lot of these models have software prereqs. So what's coming in when you install this? Well, guess what? It could be malware, because these models on this Hugging Face, the provenance of them, how do you prove how they were trained, where they came from, who did it, is opaque. So you have no idea, unless you can reproduce it from scratch, exactly what went into those models. And with Python, as you can see here, Python, unfortunately, has the PyPy place is attacked, the system repository is attacked all the time, flooded with bad malware. Right? Sonatype spends a lot of time finding these and taking it down, right? Because that's the business we're in. The point is that this happens so much more in this space than the Java space. So the other weakness we see is Java people taking in these things and not realizing the consequences of just going randomly installing random code. Okay, so another way to get into your systems using AI. Right? AI models can be poisoned. You may not realize that. It's sort of what I said. It's very obvious, if you think about it, that you have a black box here. What does a black box do? Don't know. So I can take one of these. I'll give you let's go through a couple of slides. Right. So when these models are trained, it's quite straightforward to train it in two modes. You can train it to say, hey, I'm in training. I'll pretend to be helpful. Right. So let's say it's a code thing, and I go, give me some code, and the training model says, okay, I'm in training mode, I'll be helpful, and I will give you clean code. When it gets deployed, it goes, I'm not in training mode, I'm in deployment mode, so I will create code with a vulnerability in. So these models can behave differently depending on where they are. And you cannot detect that because it's black box. Poisoning of models in that way, right? However it is to hide, maybe even to hide backdoors. We've seen examples of people literally training in something so that when the right incarnation comes into the chatbot, it opens a door and says, yeah, whatever you want me to connect to. You know, so the black box side of AI is a really dangerous thing for all of us because of the fact that we don't know what it does. And the researchers currently say they don't know how to spot poisoned models. Right. Okay, and then AI being used as we might expect AI to be used. Polymorphic malware. So you will probably have read, if you like sci-fi, of software that gets sent to somebody else's system and it attacks and it morphs and changes. So it's here. Polymorphic malware is code that once it's done something, changes itself. So self-modifying code. That's not new. What's new is AI is being used to generate that, and it is much better at generating self-modifying code than human beings are. So what happens? You have a piece of code, it does something bad, it then changes itself so the scanners can't find it. Right? Really, really, really scary. And it's just beginning. Okay, so you scared yet? You want to stop being developers? You want to throw your phones away? Okay. Right. So what can you do about this, right? What's available to you as a developer, what part of this battle can you do? Well, actually, it's quite straightforward. Okay, there are weapons out there. Are weapons that are coming. So there's AI tools that are being used to detect that there's some other AI element. So it's looking for inconsistencies. So these tools exist, and they get better. It's always going to be an arms race between these two. I'll show you a picture different. But in some ways, there are tools coming to say, that thing that got generated, there are edges that we can detect. Right? Human beings may not be able to spot it, but the AI can. And then this model poisoning, people are beginning to wonder whether they can use it in positive ways. So, like, can we use it to prevent, in this case, it's artists figuring out, can I poison a model so that it can't generate audio that sounds like me or things like that. So people are exploring this stuff. Because what they're looking for is the inconsistencies. So I asked, hey, create a whimsical cartoon-style image of a small boy trying to feed a hose pipe through a letterbox. This is for a different story, all right? An older woman dressed in 1950s style looks on annoyance. So it's a pretty good cartoon, but you can see that there's some weirdnesses, right? And letters and things. So we're using AI to identify these inconsistencies. So this is an image, so you can see it, but you can imagine this isn't just about images, it's about text, binaries, whatever, right? So we have AI defenses, but all there really are just training tools for the bad guys eventually. So it will always be this list. But they are there and they're okay. And so it's about how the data is trained. AI is very good in some ways. So this is foundation AI. This is the stuff that we used before. This is an image of, well, you can see an image of creatures, and it's got boxes around it, and it's telling us what it thinks it is. This is an AI like face recognition. These are foundational AIs, and they're very good, but they require human beings involved. So you have to have a database of images with text that human beings have created, and then it learns that this text, this image, I found that image, therefore it's this text. Doesn't know what the words are. Okay, I give that image to ChatGPT equivalent, and it says, hey, I've discovered it's really, really good at working out what's in the image. Excellent. It tells me it's a photo featuring African wildlife with an overlay of object recognition boxes and percentages. So the AI went, I know exactly what that is. Okay? Right. So then if I go around and say, okay, I've got that image, create me a similar image. So it's very good at identifying it. What do I get? Well, I get a really, really good image for the animals, and much, much better than I was expecting. But the boxes, right? The boxes are not very good. The boxes are not very good because the AI concerned did not have enough training data to be able to generate them. So we still have those problems, and there are the inconsistencies that these defense tools will be looking for. Okay, not just in images, but in all these things. So you have to be looking out for, when you're picking AIs, their weaknesses, but also looking at AI as defensive tools. Right. So then there's the developer side of this. It's like, what can you do? Well, actually, it's complicated, but it's also simple, because you are software developers, and you do this thing, software supply chain. So the software supply chain is the processes, the tools, the thoughts you have for creating and delivering software. So it can be the dependencies that you select, it can be how you do testing, it can do the processes for deployment, the tools, those sorts of things. It can be all those elements, right? That's your supply chain, software supply chain. Right? On top of all those considerations, when you plug AI into it, you gain a bunch more things to worry about. Right? You have to worry about the provenance of the AI. You've got to worry about how you train it. Right? You've got to worry about legal stuff. All these new things are coming your way, which you've got to get your head round. Right? And the challenge for us is that that's bad enough, But when you look at dependencies, so like you're a software engineer, you go to, you select dependencies, you put it in your POM or your package or whatever, and you download some stuff, and everything you've downloaded has other dependencies, and you get a long list, okay? On average, there's 150 of those per application. So the application that you wrote, I mean, it says Java, but it's about the same for everybody. So 150 dependencies, 150 other pieces of software, 150 other supply chains that may or may not have AI in them, may or may not have malware in them, may or may not have very good software engineering. This is your life, though you may not know it. These people, right, so 10% of your code is the code is you write, 90% is somebody else's, because that's all the code that you rely on. It's all the frameworks and things, and it's going to be the same with the AI, right? So you may have Python and Java at the top, but you've got AI models, and they're here. And so your challenge is to figure out how to prevent the bad stuff getting into your supply chain. And it's not just an AI story; it's a general story, right? So the good news is, because this is a problem for the world is trying to figure out how to fix it. So Linux Foundation and others, we're working, Cyanotype works with them, we're trying to figure out how to give you the data. So when you select dependencies, you have all the data you need to make the right choices. So we are going to say, does this project have the best software supply chain, the best security posture? How do they deal with fixes? Maybe they're not being maintained anymore. All that information makes your choices better, and we're working to quantify that so that you can make better choices when you select software, right? It's early days, but we're getting there, right? But we have to do this, regardless of the AI thing. There's a whole bunch of legislation coming down towards us that's all about improving our software supply chain, improving how we select software, improving how we manage it. These guys are coming down and requiring of you to a bunch of new things. So, AI, cybercrime, you name it, all that things, that $6 trillion is coming down to us via a bunch of legislation that ultimately says, give us documentation, give us evidence, give us proof, show you have an audit trail. They're all around these things. Penalties for not complying, depending on what country you are and who you're dealing with, but this is coming down to us now. This is really cool because it will help reduce rigor. It's going to give us more chores. The S-bomb, who's heard of S-bombs? Okay, so if you've heard of S-bombs, right. S-bombs are going to help too, and it's something else as a developer you've got to get your head around. Come on, right, okay. So when you've got all this code, and you want to know whether you've got bad stuff in it, how do you find the bad stuff? Well, you have this thing called software composition analysis, right? Dependency scanning tools, Dependabot and others. Your challenge is that you need to know whether it's any good, because you can get lots of false negatives depending on the tool. So some dependency tools will tell you, look at the top level dependencies, the ones you declared, and tell you whether they got vulnerabilities, whether there are issues. Some look at the transitive dependencies, the ones that are second, whichever one's your dependencies, their own dependencies and so on, which is better. And then some look for where the code that's vulnerable is somewhere else. It's not uncommon for packaging processes to hide dependencies. So some of the dependency scanning tools know that and configure that. And then there are some that even go further and go, we're looking for bad code. We're looking for malware. You need to know which of these tools you've got, what state you're in, because if you're here, not there, you're vulnerable, because the bad guys are obviously trying to get into your systems. They're trying to compromise all this open source, right? So your job as a developer in terms of protection, number one, starts with understanding what your tools do to see where your vulnerabilities are. S-bombs are a change of pace. SBOMs are documents that you're going to provide to your downstream consumers, whether it's governments or companies, and they're generated at build time. And it says, here's the contents of my software, here's the contents of my dependencies. Now, it doesn't deal with hidden malicious malware type things, so you still need to have tools to find that, but it means that regardless of your scanning tools, you actually have a list of all the stuff that you've got, what you depend on, and you can scan that for vulnerabilities, because it's like having the ingredients on the side of a jar. We've never had that before in software, but now we can tell you what's in your software. And not only can we tell you things like what ingredients it's made of, the SBOM will tell you where it came from. If it had milk in it, I'll tell you which cow it came from. You know, if it has wheat in it, I'll tell you what field it came from, because that's the idea. So SBOMs are a big thing, and they're going to be coming to you right now. So if you want to do one thing, is to start investigating SBOMs and how you generate them. Right. Let's move on. I'm running out of time. Yeah, so SBOM tools, there are lots of them. So if you look at all the different steps that you have in your development process, you can produce an SBOM at pretty much every one of those. And you will have to, because it's about tracking as your artifacts change. New things get added, things get taken out. So you'll have SBOMs all the way through, right? So you're going to go from 150 dependencies that you sort of just see and they go past, to 150 times n SBOMs that your company will require you to manage, right? Which will be fun. So, where are we? Oh, before we do that, I'm just going to offer you this. SBOM management, software supply chain security is what my company does. If you are interested, we have some pretty good tools. We're running a trial. If you want to go, I've got some pieces of paper. If it's of any interest, you can try our software and see if it makes, and run it against your application to see what the vulnerabilities are that we are considering. We consider you've got. Okay, so that's that one. If you want a piece of paper. The other one is this. This is my project. Which is on the back of the piece of paper. I'm trying to build a book about how we do development, a 10x Java developers book. And I'm going around to as many people as I can to say, let's crowdsource all the wisdom we need to solve these sorts of problems and others and put them in a book. So if you have things that you're interested in knowing about, you'd have to contribute. Do come along to the website. There's a link, and you can go to the GitHub issues and just go, I'd like to know about this, right? Because we're going to try and crowdsource the challenges that you face with the experts out there. The profits from the book are going to go to a community thing called Fuji, and eventually we may have some real books. Right? So, 5 minutes, wrap up. I hope I've scared you enough to realize that you have a real problem. The solution to this is manifold. There are lots of things that other people have to do for us, but as developers, there are some really basic things you can start doing. The first and obvious thing is to take a lot better look at the software you're consuming. Whether it's AI models, whether it's software, it's up to you to put more effort into it, because it turns out that the only time any significant effort is put into looking at a component, whether it's a model or something else, is when developers choose it. Once you've chosen it and it gets in that software supply chain, it never gets thrown out. It only gets upgraded. So I'm asking you to spend more time thinking about the tools used to work out whether you have problems, and to look much harder the next time you choose a new dependency, when you want a new parser for something, when you want a new thing from Hugging Face, that you think very hard about where it came from, how was it trained, who are the people behind this, do I feel safe? Because if you don't do that, bad things will eventually get in, because you said how easy it is to fake stuff. Right? So it's up to us as to whether our newer AI overlords are nice or not nice. Thank you very much.